My name is Elias. I'm 34, and for most of my life I've been the dependable one, the quiet son who shows up, covers the bill, and doesn't ask for much in return. If I had a role in our family, it wasn't the favorite or the rebel or even the black sheep. It was more like background support, the one who holds the scaffolding while the others paint the showy parts. My brother Calder was always the center of attention. 2 years older, tall, smooth-talking, effortlessly magnetic. Even when we were kids, people gravitated toward him. Teachers smiled wider when he entered the room. Neighbors praised his charm. My parents beamed like they had created something rare and precious. And maybe they had. Calder had a way of making mediocrity look like flair. He could fail upward without ever looking down. Meanwhile, I kept my head low. I wasn't shy, just quieter. I liked solving problems more than performing. While Calder was trying out for varsity baseball or pitching startup ideas to anyone who'd listen, I was in the garage building a second-hand server rack or coding late into the night. At family dinners, he entertained. I cleared the plates. It wasn't that my parents were unkind to me, not explicitly, but their pride always lived in Calder's stories. When he got a job in L.A. that lasted 6 months, they threw a small party. When I closed Series A, funding on my second company, my mother said, "That's nice, dear. Don't forget to rest." I learned early that applause wasn't part of my script. Still, I gave. I sent money when Calder's business flopped. I co-signed a lease when his credit was denied. I paid for family vacations when my parents hinted they'd skip for budget reasons. I covered part of Mom's surgery when the insurance wouldn't. When the heating unit in their house went out midwinter, I replaced it within 3 days. I never kept track. It felt wrong to like generosity should be quiet, or it stopped being real. They never asked directly, which somehow made it worse. They assumed. My card on file for emergencies, my email attached to the Netflix account, my name on the lake house utility bills. It was as if being self-sufficient had qualified me for silent responsibility. I told myself this was love. This was what family did. That giving without asking for anything back was noble, maybe even necessary. I thought if I gave enough, eventually they'd see me, not just the money or the quiet effort behind the scenes, but me. But there's a difference between being seen and being used. I just didn't understand that yet. That realization began to take shape 1 week before my mother's 63rd birthday. Dinner had settled into that slow, wine-warmed rhythm that always comes before speeches. Plates were cleared, the band played something light in the background, and the conversation at the table had started to quiet into anticipation. Harland stood first, of course. Glass-raised tie loosened just enough to seem relaxed, but still deliberate. He spoke about Lenora the way he always did in public, like a man reciting from a well-worn script. "She's the glue," he said, "the heartbeat. The reason we're all here tonight, and maybe even the reason we've stayed here at all." A few polite chuckles. We wouldn't be who we are without her. It was simple, affectionate, predictable. Lenora smiled graciously, eyes misty the way she got when the spotlight hit her just right. Then Calder stood. The moment he moved, the room leaned in as if expecting something grand or entertaining or possibly both. He grinned, holding his wine glass with that casual confidence that made people think he'd earned something. He looked around, letting the silence gather behind his pause like applause before a punchline. To family, he began in that overly sincere voice he used when he wanted to seem wise. To the ones who show up, who remember what really matters, connection, loyalty, love. He paused again, and I felt it coming before he said the next line. And not just numbers in a bank account. A ripple of awkward amusement passed through the room. Calder's smile widened. Except for Elias, of course. The laughter this time was louder, fuller. It started with one or two snorts, then rolled across the table like a wave. Even Harland gave a short, amused breath through his nose. Lenora shook her head and smiled not in protest, but like a mother indulging a clever child's joke. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I just sat there, hands still in my lap, eyes focused not on Calder, but on the tablecloth in front of me. Cream-colored, ironed, probably linen. There was a small crease by the edge of my plate, a fold someone had missed. The sting came slowly, not from the words themselves, I'd heard worse, but from the familiar echo of being the target wrapped in comedy, of knowing that to them it was all in good fun, that to them the line between generosity and weakness had always been a punchline. Calder sat again, sipping from his glass as if nothing had happened. The conversation resumed around me lighter now, as if some necessary tension had been released. And I stayed quiet. For another minute, maybe two. Then I reached for my glass of water and I stood. I stood with the same calm I'd carried all evening, glass of water in my hand, eyes scanning the table. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. A few heads turned slowly, unsure of what I was doing. I felt every eye settle on me like I was interrupting something sacred. And maybe I was. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't clear my throat. I just let the words land steady and sharp. "To the failure," I said, "who just stopped paying for everything you own." For a moment, no one moved. I watched Calder freeze mid-smirk. Harlan's brow furrowed, trying to process. Lenora blinked twice, as if my voice had reached her from underwater. I kept going. The car insurance canceled, the utilities on the lake house disconnected as of this morning. The Netflix account logged out on all devices. I let the rhythm settle. The emergency fund Mom used last month emptied, not stolen. Mine. The room had gone completely still now. Someone near the end of the table set down their fork with a soft clink. I heard the faint squeak of a chair behind me shift, but no one spoke. And this dinner, I glanced toward the door where the restaurant manager stood uncertainly. "That's on you now." I let the silence grow. Let them sit in it. For years I'd filled every quiet space with more giving, more fixing. Now I let the emptiness do the talking. I looked around the table slowly, deliberately. I've been carrying this family financially for a long time, quietly, without complaint, because I thought that meant something. But this, I gestured at the wine-stained laughter, the practiced smiles. This clears it up. I placed my water glass back on the table untouched. Then I turned and walked away. No one called after me. I didn't hear my name, didn't hear a chair scrape back in protest or footsteps rushing to follow. Just the muted weight of everything I'd said settling behind me. Outside, the night air felt like the first clean breath in years. Cool, crisp, still. I kept walking, hands in my pockets, the sound of my footsteps steady against the pavement. I didn't know where I was going exactly, only that I needed to move, to let the motion carry me through the noise still ringing in my head. It wasn't rage pulsing through me. It was something quieter, something older. And as I reached the end of the block, I finally felt it, the slow, undeniable ache of release. I walked for nearly an hour through downtown, weaving between bars, letting out late crowds and quiet storefronts already dark. The noise from the restaurant faded with every step, until all that was left was the rhythm of my own breath and the sound of my shoes against the pavement. I didn't feel angry, not anymore. What settled in me instead was relief, heavy, real, and unfamiliar, like I'd been holding my breath for years and was only now learning how to exhale. I went home without checking my phone, slept deeper than I had in weeks. When I finally woke, sunlight was pushing through the blinds, and my phone screen was lit up with missed calls and messages. 3 voicemails, one from Harland, clipped and tight. "You embarrassed everyone. That's not how we do things in this family. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but fix it. One from Lenora, softer, but no less strategic. Sweetheart, I think you misunderstood Calder's joke. He didn't mean anything by it. Please don't make any rash decisions. Let's talk, just you and me. And then Calder, his voice smug even through a voicemail. You overreacted as usual. So what? It was a joke. Enjoy being rich and alone. I didn't respond to any of them. Around noon, the first cracks started showing. My group phone plan was the first to go. Harlan's number didn't connect. Lenora's went straight to voicemail. That same afternoon, I noticed Mila had posted a story on social media, a blurry photo of Calder at a car dealership, arms crossed clearly mid-argument. Her caption read, "Some people only love you when they're paying for you." Lesson learned. By evening, I heard she'd left him. A friend forwarded me another post, Mila, again posing alone in front of a mirror. The dress she wore was the same one from the birthday dinner. The caption was short, "Never again." I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I just sat at my desk, opened a blank spreadsheet, and started typing. Not because I needed proof, but because for the first time I wanted to see it for myself, what I had given, what they had taken, and what I had finally let go. And when I added up the numbers, I realized I hadn't even scratched the surface. The spreadsheet took 2 hours to build. Not because the math was difficult, but because the memories came slowly. One charge led to another one, forgotten favor surfaced a second. 4 vacations, 3 of Calder's business attempts, credit card debts cleared without a word, the surgery bill when Lenora's insurance fell short, the lake house maintenance, the family cruise for their 30th anniversary. Altogether over $120,000 quietly transferred, quietly erased. When I finished, I saved the file as ledger.xlsx, attached it to a blank email, and typed only one line in the subject field, "In case you forgot." I sent it to all 3 of them. Then I closed my laptop and didn't look at my inbox again that day. The next morning, Harlan called. I didn't pick up. His voicemail was cold and clipped. "You've embarrassed the family. I don't know what this is about, airing private matters like we're strangers. It was childish. There was no mention of the numbers, no acknowledgement of the years behind them. By mid-afternoon, I heard the doorbell. I hadn't given them my new address, but I wasn't surprised. Calder had access to old shipping confirmations, and nothing stayed private long in our family. When I opened the door, Lenora stood there smiling too brightly, holding a white bakery box tied with string. "I brought those lemon pastries you used to like," she said. I didn't speak. I stepped aside, and she walked in like she still knew the place. She sat on the edge of the couch, placed the box on the table, and looked around. "It's lovely here. You've done well." I stayed standing. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she began. "You have to understand, Calder has always struggled more. You've always been so capable." I shook my head. "No misunderstanding. I just stopped pretending." She blinked. "He's your brother Elias. Family doesn't mock you over wine you paid for," I said. "Not in suits you bought, not while your parents laugh." Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the box. "We didn't mean—" "You meant every word I said. You just didn't think I'd ever stop funding it." She left a minute later, pastries in hand, like she'd forgotten she was holding them. I watched her go, then sat back down and opened the folder I'd started for everything that came next. A week passed without contact, no calls, no knocks on the door, just the stillness that follows a storm you started on purpose. I thought maybe they'd taken the hint, that the silence meant they were finally sitting with the truth. But then one night I came home late and found a thick manila envelope wedged under my front door. No return address, just my name written across the front in my father's sharp, familiar hand. I set it on the kitchen counter and stood over it for a long time before opening it. I expected drama, maybe a guilt letter, maybe a legal threat. Instead, I found neatly printed bank statements, mortgage papers, and a folded note on top. Elias, I know we've made mistakes. I made mistakes. But I need you to see something before this goes further. Please. Dad. The tone was tired, not bitter, not warm, just tired. I flipped through the statements. They were from a joint account in Harland and Lenora's names. Withdrawals, some small, others in the thousands, regular stretching over the last 2 years. Most of them tagged or memoed for Calder, or with generic labels like support or bridge. Tucked between property documents was a printed email, the subject line, house line of credit. It was from my father to their accountant, asking how much longer they could keep the loan afloat before refinancing became impossible. In the message, he wrote, "We were just trying to help Calder get back on his feet. We didn't want Elias to know. He's done enough already." That line stopped me. He's done enough already. It wasn't said to me. It wasn't meant for me. But there it was, quiet, and buried in admission, unspoken but undeniable. The closest thing to an apology I'd ever received from my father, and it lived in a forwarded email about a house they were trying not to lose. There was one last printed message near the bottom of the stack, this one from Calder to Harland, dated days after the dinner. "If Elias won't help any more, we might need to sell. You said the market's still good. I know Mom's not ready, but we're out of time." I sat down, holding the pages, the ache in my chest, no longer about the money. It was about the wreckage they were still willing to accept to keep Calder floating. And I knew then I couldn't stay out of it. Not entirely. The doorbell rang just after sunset. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I knew. I opened the door to find Calder standing there, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, eyes darting like he was still deciding whether to go through with whatever he'd rehearsed. "Elias," he said. "We need to talk." I didn't invite him in right away. He looked smaller than usual, shoulders hunched, voice low, the usual edge replaced by something closer to panic. I stepped aside. He walked in without a word, glancing around like the walls might judge him too. We sat at the kitchen island. I didn't offer him a drink. He didn't ask for one. He leaned forward, elbows on the counter. "Dad's going to lose the house," he said. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached into the drawer beside me, pulled out the manila folder and set it down between us. "I know," I said. He stared at it, then looked up at me, face pale. "You've seen everything," I nodded. He swallowed hard. "Are you going to help them? I already am." His eyes flickered, confused, almost hopeful. "You are. I've started the paperwork to buy the house," I said. "At market value. I'm placing it in a trust. They'll live in it as long as they need, free of debt, free of risk. The rest of their credit lines will be cleared. Quietly, legally." Relief flickered across his face, but it didn't last. "You're buying it," he said slowly. "So? What about me? You're not part of the deal." His head snapped back, stunned. "Wait. What? I'm done financing your chaos," I said. "No more loans, no more rescues. You've had a lifetime of them. This is where it ends." He stared at me, jaw clenched, as if willing himself not to explode. "You think you're better than me now?" I held his gaze. "No, I always was. You just refused to see it." He didn't answer, just stood up, pushing his stool back hard enough that it scraped the floor. He left without slamming the door, without another word. And I stayed exactly where I was, the folder still open in front of me, the weight of it no longer unfamiliar, just necessary. For days after Calder left, I heard nothing. No calls, no messages, just a quiet ripple of absence that didn't feel like loss, only confirmation. I continued with the paperwork. My lawyer drafted the trust, structured the purchase of the house, outlined the protections, no refinance, no equity access, no Calder. When Harland and Lenora finally reached out, it wasn't to apologize. It was to schedule a meeting to sign the documents. They didn't ask questions. They didn't resist. They just said they were ready. We met at the lawyer's office. The room was quiet, clinical. Harland looked older than I remembered, tired in the eyes, slower in the way he moved. Lenora barely looked at me, focusing on the papers, signing each one with a stiff precision that felt like penance. No one asked how I'd been. No one mentioned the dinner. No one said thank you. I didn't stay long. When the last signature was down, I stood, nodded once, and turned to leave. Outside, the late afternoon sun was still sharp, but the air felt cooler, lighter. I hadn't realized how long I'd been carrying the shape of our dysfunction, how long I'd been bending myself into the form they needed. The trust wasn't just legal protection. It was a line drawn, a border between what I owed them and what I no longer did. Later that night, Calder texted once. No words, just a period. I didn't respond. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even waiting for remorse. There was nothing left to negotiate. The next morning, the final confirmations came through. The house was secure, the accounts were settled, the trust was active. My name was on the deed, but not for ownership, only for protection. And in that stillness, in that simple, unremarkable moment, I realized the weight had finally shifted. A few months passed. I didn't hear much from Calder, but word reached me through people who still lingered on the edge of both our lives. He'd tried another job marketing this time again. Quit after 3 weeks. Something about the manager not respecting him. It didn't surprise me. The house remained steady. Harland and Lenora stayed quiet, careful. No new requests, no passive commentary, just small updates relayed through official channels. The trust worked exactly as intended, safe, structured, impersonal. That December, a card arrived in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was hers. Inside was a single line in blue ink. We didn't deserve your grace. Thank you anyway. Mom. There was no signature, no follow-up message, no plea. I held it for a moment, then placed it in the same drawer where I kept the manila folder. Not out of sentimentality, but completion. The last word, maybe. I sleep better now. My phone stays quiet at night. My mind doesn't run laps around conversations I'll never win. I go to work, I come home, I cook, I read. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, but it's mine. There's a peace that comes not from being understood, but from no longer needing to be. I no longer check for messages. I don't wonder who they talk about me to or what they think when my name comes up. That part of me, hungry, waiting, hopeful, is quiet now. I gave more than they knew. But I also kept something for myself, even if I didn't realize it at the time. And now, finally, I've learned how to live without asking anyone to see me first.